Welcome back to the deep dive.
Always exciting to dive into a new report.
Today we're looking at Voltas Ltd.
Oh, yeah, you know those guys.
Our listeners have been following them
Keeping an eye on things.
and wanted a breakdown of their latest quarterly report.
We got that for you.
We dug into their press release and stock exchange filings,
The good stuff.
and this is hot off the presses, released just a few days ago
Oh, wow.
on October 29th.
2024.
2024, that's right.
So this is like a sneak peek.
Yeah.
Before everyone else gets to it.
Before the market really digests it.
That's right.
But before we get lost in the numbers,
Yeah.
I think we should paint a picture for anyone who might not be familiar with Voltas.
Right.
Can you give us the rundown?
Voltas is a major player in the Indian market.
Okay.
They're listed on both the Bombay Stock Exchange,
The BSE.
the BSE, that's right,
I would forget.
and the National Stock Exchange, or NSE,
So that's both of the big exchanges in India?
the two big ones.
Okay, so that means Voltas is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, they're significant for sure.
All right, so we're looking at their unaudited results
Yeah.
for the second quarter of their fiscal year 2025.
Which wrapped up September 30th, 2024.
2024.
Yes.
Okay, so unaudited.
Yeah.
So that means this is like a first draft, right?
Yeah, think of it like a sneak peek behind the curtain.
Before the final show.
Exactly.
Okay, so the numbers could shift a bit after the official audit.
Potentially, yeah.
But it's still interesting to get this early look.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear about Voltas' performance,
I bet.
especially compared to the previous quarter and the same time last year.
Yeah, how do they stack up?
Right.
Well, first we have to remember what revenue and profit actually mean.
Oh, right. Good point.
Revenue is all the money a company brings in,
Okay.
and profit is what's left after expenses,
Makes sense.
like your paycheck,
Uh,
versus what you actually get to save.
After paying bills.
Exactly.
Perfect analogy. So our listener had some great questions about Voltas' revenue and profit
Oh, good.
compared to last quarter and last year.
Smart questions.
And I know they're big in air conditioning,
Yeah, they are well known for that.
but they also do other things right.
Absolutely. They have diverse segments.
So our listener wants to know how those different parts of Voltas are performing.
Of course. Got to see the whole picture.
Right. And they're also curious about where Voltas stands against its competitors.
Yeah, how do they measure up?
Right. So where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, the official document doesn't lay it out in a neat little package.
Good.
It's more like a financial breadcrumb trail.
Oh, I like that.
So we have to follow the clues.
We're like financial detectives.
Exactly.
So what are some of the standout clues that you spotted so far?
Well, the first one is that the board of directors met to discuss these results.
Oh, that's always a good sign.
These aren't just casual coffee chats.
Right. It means they're taking things seriously.
Exactly.
Correct.
Serious business.
So our listener was particularly interested in any one-time gains or losses
Yeah, those can be important.
because they can really skew the numbers,
Absolutely. It's not always typical performance.
like winning the lottery.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean you're going to be rich forever.
Nope. Just a lucky break.
So did Voltas win any financial lotteries this quarter?
Unfortunately, the report doesn't give us a detailed breakdown.
Oh, so they're keeping that a secret for now.
It seems that way.
Okay, so the mystery continues.
For now.
What about the performance of Voltas' different business segments?
That's another piece of the puzzle we're missing right now.
So we don't know how each part of the business is doing.
Not from this document, no.
So it's like having a map with a few key landmarks, but large sections are uncharted.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. So I guess the competitive landscape is another area where we're missing pieces.
You're right, this document doesn't offer any direct comparisons.
So we don't know how Voltas is doing compared to its rivals.
Not from this report alone.
So we need to gather intel from other sources.
Exactly like industry reports.
Okay, so it's like we're piecing together a puzzle
But we need more pieces.
to get the full picture.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to another clue you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Cost and margin trends.
Right.
So the report doesn't have specific numbers,
Sure.
but it does mention that the statutory auditors conducted a limited review.
Yes, a limited review.
Can you explain what that means in plain English?
Well, think of it like a doctor checking your vital signs.
Okay.
Pulse, temperature, blood pressure.
Gotcha.
It's a good initial checkup,
Okay.
but not a full medical exam.
So no major alarms, but not a complete clean bill of health either.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay. So it means the auditors looked for any red flags
Exactly.
specifically related to cost and profitability.
That's right.
Okay. So no major problems, but we need more information.
Exactly.
What about strategic moves?
Oh.
Did Voltas hint at any big investments or changes in direction in this report?
Unfortunately, no. This report keeps things pretty close to the vest.
Oh, so no big reveals.
Not in this document.
Okay.
It's mostly focused on reporting the numbers.
All right, so they're playing it safe.
It seems so.
Did they give any hints about what they expect for the rest of the fiscal year?
No, this report just covers the quarter that just ended.
So, no, looking ahead.
Not in this one.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about how the market is reacting to all of this.
Right.
Any early indicators about what investors think?
Well, it's tough to say because it was just released.
Right, just a few days ago.
So we haven't seen how the market will react yet.
So we have to wait and see.
Exactly.
All right, so another mystery to solve.
That's right.
Well, for now, let's take a step back and see what we've uncovered about Voltas from this initial exploration.
Sounds good to me.
We've definitely got some more digging to do.
Oh, yeah, there's always more to uncover.
But that's the fun of it, right?
Absolutely.
It's like solving a puzzle.
One piece at a time.
Exactly.
So what have we learned so far?
Well, we know Voltas is operating,
That's a good start.
the board is engaged,
Always a plus.
and the auditors haven't sounded any alarms.
So no red flags yet.
But we need more information to really understand how Voltas is performing
That's right.
and where they're headed.
We'll get there.
It's like we've found a few footprints, but we need more clues to track down the whole animal.
A good analogy.
Thanks. So for our listener, this deep dive is just the beginning.
There's always more to learn.
There's so much more to explore. And who knows, maybe by the time Voltas releases their full Q2 report or hosts an earnings call, we'll have even more questions to guide our next investigation.
Oh, I love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Always up for a challenge.
Me too.
Speaking of digging deeper, I'm curious,
Like that?
what are some other places our listener could look for information about Voltas?
Well, you mentioned industry reports.
Right.
Those can be really helpful.
What are those exactly?
They're like detailed maps of a specific sector,
Up.
compiled by research firms and analysts
Gotcha.
who specialize in that industry.
So they really know their stuff.
Yeah, they provide a wealth of information.
Like what kind of information?
Market trends, competitive landscape, key players.
So you can see how Voltas fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Like understanding the terrain before you build a house.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
So you want to know if the ground is stable, if there's enough sunlight,
Right.
if there are any potential hazards nearby?
Makes sense.
Industry reports can help you assess those factors.
So where would someone find these industry reports?
Well, some are publicly available,
Okay.
but the most comprehensive ones are subscription-based.
So it's like paying for access to a special library.
Yeah, you pay a fee to access their research.
So it's like having a team of expert researchers at your fingertips.
Yeah, constantly gathering and analyzing information.
That sounds really valuable.
Oh, it can be, especially if you're serious about investing.
Okay, so if our listener wants to do some serious detective work on Voltas,
Mm-hmm.
they can start by looking for industry reports that cover the Indian market,
Exactly.
and specifically focusing on sectors like engineering, construction,
Right.
and perhaps consumer durables.
Yeah, since that's where Voltas operates.
Exactly.
That's a great starting point.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
Always good to be prepared.
This is a whole new level of research I never even knew about.
There's always something new to learn.
So for our listener, this deep dive is just the tip of the iceberg.
There's a whole world of information out there.
And it's up to you to decide how deep you want to dive.
That's right.
But remember, the more informed you are,
Yes.
the better equipped you'll be to make smart investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive so far.
We have.
We've examined the unaudited report, discussed the importance of context and further research, and even explored some additional resources for our listener to check out.
A lot of good stuff.
But before we wrap things up,
Oh, yeah.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
What's that?
The waiting game of seeing how the market reacts to these earnings releases.
Yes, the stock market.
It's like a giant voting machine, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Reflecting how investors feel about a company.
Exactly.
So how can our listener gauge that sentiment?
Well, watching the stock price is a good starting point.
Okay.
If Voltas's shares go up after this report,
Yeah.
it suggests that investors are generally pleased.
Even if it's just a preliminary glimpse.
Right.
But if the price drops,
Hmm.
that could indicate concerns.
Potentially. Yeah.
So it's more about observing the overall trend
Exactly.
rather than getting caught up in the daily ups and downs.
That's right.
Okay, so don't panic if the price dips a little.
Exactly. It's a long game.
Gotcha.
Another way to gauge sentiment is to see what the analysts are saying.
Oh, right, like those expert reports we were talking to.
Exactly. They often release reports with their assessment.
So it's like getting a second opinion from a financial doctor.
I like that.
They've examined the patient's chart,
Uh-huh.
Voltas's financial reports,
Right?
and they're offering their diagnosis.
Exactly.
But it's important to remember those are just opinions.
Yes, of course.
Not guarantees.
They're based on the information available at the time.
Right.
And the analyst's own interpretation.
So just like with any medical diagnosis,
Yeah.
it's good to get a second opinion
Maybe even a third.
before making any major decisions.
Absolutely. Diversify your sources of information.
Right.
Consider different perspectives.
And always do your own research.
The golden rule.
Speaking of doing your own research, I'm curious.
What's on your mind?
What are some key things our listeners should watch for as they continue to follow Voltas?
Good question.
What kind of news or events could signal positive or negative developments?
Okay, well, first, watch for the release of Voltas's full quarterly report.
Okay.
That will provide a much deeper dive into their financials.
So more details than what we have now.
Exactly, and it will also include commentary from management
Oh, interesting.
about their performance, challenges, and outlook.
So it's like getting a first-hand account from the captain of the ship.
Haha, I like that.
Thanks.
Second, keep an eye on any news related to Voltas's different business segments.
Like their air conditioning business?
Yeah, or their engineering division.
So if they announce a major new contract win,
Uh-huh.
that could be a positive sign.
Exactly, or a successful product launch.
Right. But if they face setbacks, like a project delay or a product recall,
That could raise some concerns.
it's like watching a multifaceted play unfold.
With each act representing a different part of the business.
I love your analogies.
Thanks, I try.
And finally, pay attention to any broader economic or industry trends that could impact Voltas.
Yes, that's important context.
Like if there's a slowdown in the Indian construction sector,
Right, that could negatively impact their engineering business.
or if there's a surge in demand for energy-efficient appliances.
That could benefit their consumer durables division.
So it's all about understanding the bigger picture,
Exactly the context in which Voltas operates.
like realizing that the weather can affect the outcome of a football game.
Haha, yes.
You can't just focus on the players and their skills.
You also need to consider the external factors.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground,
How much?
from deciphering unaudited financial reports to understanding investor sentiment
Yeah.
and exploring additional research avenues.
It's been great.
I feel like I've learned a ton,
Me too.
and I'm sure our listener has too.
I hope so.
And I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Right.
For our listener who's been following Voltas Ltd, remember that this journey of discovery doesn't end here.
Keep learning.
Keep asking questions
And keep digging deeper.
and keep an open mind as you navigate the ever-changing world of finance.
Wise words.
As always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.
Yeah, it really is amazing how just one document can spark so many questions.
It's like we've started piecing together a puzzle,
Right.
but we're still missing some key pieces.
And that's what makes deep dives like this so important.
We're going beyond just the headlines.
Yeah,
Really trying to understand what's happening beneath the surface.
absolutely.
One thing that struck me was how little this report actually revealed.
Oh, yeah.
Very focused on reporting just the numbers for the quarter.
It's like a bare bones financial skeleton.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And it highlights a crucial point.
What's that?
Different types of corporate communications serve different purposes.
Right. Different documents, different goals.
This one, the unaudited quarterly report,
Yeah.
is primarily about fulfilling regulatory requirements.
Making sure the stock exchanges and investors have that basic financial information.
Right, and quickly.
Exactly. Got to keep everyone updated.
So it's not necessarily designed to provide deep insights.
Or strategic outlooks.
More like a quick check-in than a full-blown performance review.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we're just getting a taste.
Got to wait for the main course to really dig in.
Exactly.
Speaking of getting in,
Yeah.
let's go back to the limited review by the statutory auditors.
Okay.
Remember, it's like a doctor checking your vital signs.
Pulse, temp, all that.
Exactly. And while it doesn't guarantee perfect health,
True.
the fact that they didn't flag any major concerns could be seen as a positive.
It's like they're saying, hey, everything seems to be in the right place, but we'll do a more thorough check later.
Yeah, no need to call the ambulance just yet. Exactly.
But it does make me wonder, why even bother with a limited review if it's not a full-blown audit?
Good question.
What's the point?
Well, it's about striking a balance.
Between what and what?
Timely information and a thorough examination.
Okay.
A full audit takes time.
Right.
Investors want information as soon as possible after a quarter ends.
Makes sense.
So this limited review allows companies to release those unaudited results quicker, but still provide some assurance
Exactly.
that the numbers have been at least partially vetted.
By independent experts.
Okay, so it's like a quick quality control check
To make sure everything looks reasonable.
at first glance.
Exactly.
While we wait for the full audit later.
That's right.
Okay, that makes sense.
So even though this report isn't the whole story, it's still valuable.
It's a piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
So what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listener?
I'd say it confirms that Voltas is operating, the board is engaged, and the auditors didn't find anything alarming.
Okay, so no red flags.
Not yet, at least.
But to really understand how they're performing and where they're headed,
We need more information.
from their full quarterly report or investor presentations,
Right.
like we found a few footprints, but we need more to track down the whole animal.
Haha, I love that.
And that's the beauty of investing, right?
What do you mean?
It's an ongoing process of discovery.
Constantly gathering information, evaluating, adjusting,
This report is just one data point in that journey.
one step at a time.
So for our listener, this deep dive is just the beginning.
There's always more to explore.
And maybe by the time their full Q2 report comes out,
Or their earnings call.
we'll have even more questions from you to guide our next investigation.
Oh, I'd love that.
Me too. Always up for a challenge.
Oh, me too.
Speaking of digging deeper,
Yeah.
what are some other places our listener could look for information about Voltas?
Well, we talked about those industry reports.
Right, like those detailed maps of a specific sector.
Compiled by research firms and analysts.
So if you're thinking about investing in a company like Voltas,
Yeah.
you don't just want to look at their individual performance.
You want to see how they fit into the entire industry ecosystem.
like understanding the terrain before you build a house.
Exactly. You want to know if the ground is stable,
Right.
if there's enough sunlight, if there are any hazards.
Those industry reports can help you assess all of that.
That's right.
So where would someone even find these reports?
Well, some are available publicly, but the best ones are usually subscription-based.
So it's like a specialized library for investors.
Yeah, you pay a fee to access their collection of research,
So it's like having a team of expert researchers at your fingertips.
constantly gathering and analyzing information.
Sounds pretty valuable.
It can be, especially for serious investors.
So if our listener wants to do some serious detective work on Voltas, they could start by looking for industry reports that cover the Indian market,
Exactly.
specifically focusing on sectors like engineering, construction,
Right.
and maybe consumer durables, since that's where Voltas operates.
That's a great starting point.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
Haha. Always good to be prepared.
This is a whole new level of research I never even knew about,
It's amazing how much information is out there.
if you know where to look.
Exactly. And that's one of the exciting things about investing.
What's that?
It's a constant learning process.
Always something new to discover.
A new angle to explore.
So for our listener, the takeaway here is that this unaudited report is just the tip of the iceberg.
Keep digging.
There's a whole world of information waiting to be unearthed.
You just got to find it.
And it's up to you to decide how deep you want to dive.
That's right.
But remember, the more informed you are,
The better.
the better equipped you'll be to make smart investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Examine the report, discuss the importance of context and further research, even explored some additional resources for our listener.
Lots of good stuff.
But before we wrap things up,
Okay.
let's go back to what you mentioned earlier about the waiting game,
Ah, yes, the stock market.
seeing how it reacts to these earnings releases.
It's like a giant voting machine reflecting investor sentiment.
So how can our listener gauge that sentiment?
Well, watching the stock price is a good start.
Okay.
If it goes up after this report,
Uh-huh.
it suggests investors are generally pleased with news.
But if the price drops,
It could indicate some concerns.
so it's more about observing the trend over time.
Exactly. Don't get caught up in the daily ups and downs.
The long game.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Another way to gauge sentiment is to see what the analysts are saying.
Oh, right. Those expert reports.
Yeah, they often release reports with their assessments and recommendations.
So it's like getting a second opinion from a financial doctor.
Haha. Love that analogy.
They've examined the patient's chart, Voltas's financials.
And offered their diagnosis.
But it's important to remember those are just opinions.
Yes, of course.
Not guarantees.
Based on the information they have and their own interpretation.
So just like any medical diagnosis, Get a second opinion
Maybe even a third.
before making any major decisions.
Absolutely. Diversify your sources.
Consider different perspectives.
And always do your own research.
Golden rule.
Absolutely.
Speaking of research, what are some key things our listeners should watch for as they continue to follow Voltas?
What kind of news or events could signal positive or negative developments? Right, exactly.
Well, keep an eye out for the release of their full quarterly report.
Okay.
That'll give a deeper dive into their financials and include commentary from management about their performance and outlook.
So it's like hearing from the captain of the ship.
Exactly.
Oh.
Also, keep an eye on news related to Voltas's different business segments.
Like their air conditioning business.
Yeah. For example, if they announce a major contract win
Okay.
or a successful product launch.
But if they have setbacks, like a project delay or product recall,
That could raise some concerns.
it's like a multifaceted play unfolding.
Each act representing a different part of the business.
Love it.
And finally, pay attention to broader economic or industry trends,
That could impact Voltas,
like a slowdown in construction
which would impact their engineering business,
or a surge in demand for energy-efficient appliances.
helping their durables division.
Exactly.
So it's about understanding the context,
The bigger picture.
like realizing that weather can affect a football game. Haha, right? You can't just focus on the players.
You have to consider external factors.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has. We've covered so much ground.
Deciphering reports, understanding investor sentiment.
Exploring research avenues.
It's been great.
I feel like we've all learned a lot.
Me too. I always enjoy uncovering those hidden stories behind the numbers.
And I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Right.
For our listener, remember, this journey doesn't end here.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking questions. Keep digging deeper
And keep an open mind.
as you navigate the world of finance.
Wise words.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Until next time,
Yeah, it feels like we've really been on this journey with Voltas.
uncovering clues and piecing together their story.
And we may not have all the answers yet.
True, but that's part of what makes investing so intriguing.
Keeps things interesting.
Definitely.
Speaking of new perspectives,
Okay.
let's talk about investor sentiment.
You know, how the market feels.
You mentioned the stock market's like a giant voting machine.
Reflecting how investors feel about a company.
So how can our listener gauge that sentiment? Especially since this report was just released.
Good question. Well, watching the stock price is a good start.
Okay.
If Volta's shares go up after this report, it suggests that investors are pleased with what they're seeing.
Even though it's just a preliminary look.
Right.
But if the price drops,
That could indicate some concern.
so it's more about watching the overall trend
Exactly.
over time.
Don't get caught up in the daily ups and downs.
It's a long game.
Exactly.
Another way to gauge sentiment is to see what those analysts are saying.
Right, those expert reports we talked about.
Like getting a second opinion from a financial doctor.
Haha, love that.
They've examined the patient's chart
Voltas Financial.
and are offering their diagnosis.
Exactly.
But those are just opinions
Yes, of course not guarantees.
based on what they know at the time.
And their own interpretations.
So just like with any medical diagnosis, get a second opinion
Maybe even a third.
before making any big decisions.
Diversify those sources of information.
Consider different perspectives.
And always do your own research.
Couldn't agree more.
So, what else is on your mind?
What should our listeners be watching for as they follow Voltas?
What kind of news or events could signal good or bad developments?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, first, keep an eye out for the release of their full quarterly report.
Okay, so more detail than we have now.
Exactly. And it'll include commentary from management about their performance and outlook.
Like getting a first-hand account from the captain of the ship.
Exactly.
Cool. What else?
Pay attention to news about Volta's different business segments.
Okay, like their air conditioning business.
Yeah, or their engineering division, for example, if they announce a major contract win.
That'd be a good sign.
Exactly. Or a successful product launch.
But if there are setbacks, like a project delay,
Or a product recall.
that could be cause for concern.
It's all about looking at the different parts of the business.
Like a play with multiple acts. And finally, we have to pay attention to those broader economic trends.
Yes, the industry trends that could impact Voltas.
Like a slowdown in construction,
Which could impact their engineering business.
or a surge in demand for energy-efficient appliances.
Which would be good for their durables division.
It's all about understanding that bigger picture.
The context.
Like realizing that the weather can affect a football game.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you can't just focus on the players.
You have to consider those external factors.
Couldn't agree more.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has. We've covered a lot.
From deciphering those unaudited financial reports,
To understanding investor sentiment,
yeah, and finding new research avenues.
it's been great.
I feel like we've all learned a lot.
I always enjoy uncovering those hidden stories behind the numbers.
And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
All right.
For our listener, this journey doesn't end here.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and keep an open mind as you navigate the world of finance.
Wise word.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.